Hi everyone. Today I wanted to go over one of the most asked questions that I get and that I actually see in our groups and so forth, and that is material placement, how to set up your laser to where it's going to trace your, be center inside your material, burn inside your material, how to set your laser. I actually did a video on this in the past, and I figured I would do another one with probably similar ways, a couple different other options that you can do in Lightburn, and just a refresher, however you want to call it. So what I want you to see is really it doesn't matter too much what material you have. What pretty much it goes by is how you want to burn it and what you want to burn. So any of the round materials, I always try and find the center. I can post a link of some different ways to find the center of your circle, and then you'll set up Lightburn to start from the center, which I'll show you. And same thing with a rectangle or a square, different methods that I use to make sure that I get it dead center, or get my burn, my logo or whatever I'm doing perfectly where I want it in the material. So one thing that I could say is that if you ever just want to find the center of whatever you're burning on, it could be an easier method. I have a friend of mine that mainly does everything in the center, but I'll show you the different ways to do that. So let's start with the square, the tile, and we'll burn little baby Yoda. Now, one thing you need to make sure is that your material is square to your frame. So there's tons of different ways to do that. I have a mat that I got, and I usually measure from one edge and other to the frame and make sure it's the same distance. Sometimes I'll actually put a piece of wood that fits right here, and then I'll just butt this up to the wood, and then I know any of my squares are straight. So we'll that's another story for another day. So we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna show you how I would put the Yoda on this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to measure the material that I'm burning. That's kind of the key thing that I make sure I do first. Whoops. So here I have 4 1/4 exactly by 4 1/4 exactly. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Lightburn. I'm going to go ahead and hide this image first. And in Lightburn, we're going to, let me see if I can move my camera here out of the way. Here we go. First thing we're going to do is create a rectangle. And when you first create it, you're going to, now if it goes away, that's because it's on a layer that I just hid. So I'm going to show that layer. And then I'm actually going to click away for a minute. I'm going to click it, and I'm going to switch it to another layer, which would be by you click on it, and then you come down here to any other layer. Let's just say 23. And then now I can actually hide the first layer again. So we're going to take this rectangle and we're going to make it 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. Now I have mine in inches. If you have yours in millimeters, just measure your millimeter size and go from there. So the materials are my squares right here, and you're going to want to come up here to unlock it, and I'm going to change it to 4.25 tab 4.25 tab, and I'm going to change it to line. So it's not really a good dark color. Let me change it down here to 20. Here we go. It might be a little bit better to see it. So basically this represents my tile. So now I know that this is 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. This is the exact size of what I want to burn on. So whatever I put inside of this is what's going to fit inside there. And so if I turn on my, turn on my Baby Yoda logo, let me click on it, and oops, it's not locked. You want to make sure it's locked so it stays in proportion. I'm going to shrink it down, and let me move it up in here. So now I know the size of my Baby Yoda is going to fit perfectly inside that rectangle. Now for me, I would probably make it a little bit bigger, and so now that I make sure I have it locked, I'm just going to increase the width, or you can, and it will increase the height accordingly because we have it locked, or you can just change the percentage. And then what I'll do is I can select them both, come up here to center, and it's going to center it. So that's going to be pretty much what I want to burn. So what we need to do is set up the laser so that it's going to be right where I want it on that material. So there's a couple different ways to do that. There's in Lightburn, you have user origin, current position, and absolute chords. The two that I use the most are user origin and current position, and I'll go through the two with you, and you can kind of decide which one that you want to use. And your 9 dots here represent where you're going to burn, or where you're going to start with your material. So you see the green dot here, that is the lower left. If I plan on my laser starting from the center left side, that's where I'm going to choose. If I want to do center, I'll do a center. So wherever that dot is where you want your laser to be. So if you zoom out, let me just turn the camera off for a second here. So if you look here on Lightburn, you will see the little red crosshairs, and that's where this that's where the software thinks your laser is, and mine actually is. Mine's always to the left. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to click home, and this is for the 6550 Pro. You can click home. If you don't have the 6550 Pro, you just need to make sure that you know where it's at, as opposed to where the where the software knows it's at, and I'll show you the two like right now. So if you have the 6550 Pro, just click home, and Lightburn's going to home your machine. If I click on the Move tab, click Get Position, it thinks it's at 0.039, and if I look here, click Get Position, that's where it thinks it's at on the machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move. Let me move this here. I'm actually going to move my laser. So if I click here, and I'm going to go to Arrange, Move Laser to the lower left corner of my selection. Now I'm going to turn my camera back on for you, and you'll see my laser coming in, and that's where it thinks my material is. So the laser now thinks it's on the left corner of your material. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom this out a little bit here for you. What you could do is you could actually move your material to there, or you can move your machine up to where the left corner is. I usually move my machine there. It just makes it a little easier for me, as long as it's not a far distance. You want to get it as close as you can, and then you might be able to just move it a little bit. But just remember, you're going to be off from your actual home position for the 6550 Pro. For the regular 6550, you could do the exact same thing. Just move your laser to the bottom left, and then tell it to come here, and then again just move it by hand to where the corner is. Now I have my shield off so you can see, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go up to if you don't have the fire button here on the Move tab, you can get it by going to Edit. Actually, let me show you. Hold on one second here. Okay, you can get it. Let me turn that off. You can get it by going to Edit. I believe it is Settings. Nope, it is Edit Device Settings. And Enable Laser Fire button right here. So you turn that on, click OK. You may have to close your software and reopen it again. But what we want to do is set it to 1%, and then we're going to click Fire. When you do that, let me turn that back on. When you do that, you're going to notice on your laser light's going to come on. It's going to be on really low power. Now, I don't want to keep mine on because I don't want it to burn. I don't want to burn my mat here. But I'm going to need to lower mine down a little bit because obviously I'm up way too far. Get that down a little bit here. Get your distance that you need from your material. I'm just going to get mine close here. We're not going to burn. And then, so we're going to want that light to come on right on the corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the fire button on. And then I'm actually going to move the laser slightly just so it hits that corner, which is right where I want it. Just on that corner right there. Turn the laser off. Now I'm actually, let me lower the camera so you can see what I'm talking about here. Okay, that might give you a little bit better angle here. So hit the fire button, and I actually have it set right to that corner, the bottom left corner. Now I'm currently on user origin, and I want mine to be the bottom left corner of my material. So I'm going to make sure I have user origin, bottom left hand side checked. And then what you can do before you do a frame, if you want to be positive, if you click on your frame and then you go up to arrange, move laser to the where is it at, the right lower of selection, it's actually going to move over, and then now you turn your fire button on again. Now if you find that it's too far up the material or too far down, I lost my little marker. If you find it's too far up or too far down, then you may not be in square. But what we're going to do is we're going to turn the laser on, and we want it to be right on this corner. And then pretty much that's how I set mine up, and it's pretty much dead on the corner. So I'm going to actually go, whoops. Now I'm going to go back, arrange, move laser to left side, and then I'm going to click set origin. And remember, we're on user origin here, so we need to set the origin. And so now no matter where you move your laser to, it's going to bring it back there. So if I just jog my laser to the left a little bit, I can always say go back to origin. It's going to put it right back there. So now we're going to do frame and have it frame the whole material. But if you hold the shift key when you hit frame, the shift key makes the laser come on at a low power, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch the laser as it goes around the entire piece here, and I'm going to make sure it stays just on the edge. If I do my frame and it actually goes off on this side too much and on the material on this side over here, then I'm going to actually, with my hand, I'm just going to grab this wheel here, and I'm just going to move the laser a little bit like that. So let's go ahead and hold the shift key and click frame. And I'm watching the laser and making sure that it's staying on the material. Now, one thing I want to mention here is, probably should have told you earlier, under your layers, make sure you only have your frame layer on. Let me move this over a little bit here. So what we want is we want to have the frame layer on, because that's what we're going to pretty much trace here. And if you find your laser's moving too fast, hit the move tab, and then we can just slow it down a little bit. I'm going to slow mine down to 130, and then I'm going to hit frame again. And if you notice on mine, on the right hand side, it's on the edge. The top is off, and the left side is a little bit off. So I'm going to actually just pull this to the left, or to the right, sorry, just a tad, just very, very little bit. And the same thing with pulling it, actually it's off here, so the same thing with pulling it backward, just a very, very little bit. And I'm going to hold the shift key and hit frame again. That's good. That's actually perfect there, perfect on the back, and perfect on the left side. So now that we have that, we already have our origin set, and now I feel confident knowing that if I go back to cuts and I go to turn on output on the to Qt IM, click on preview, right click, go to preview, you can see that it's going to cut inside of that square, and you want to make sure you turn your framing off. So pretty much it's only going to just do your logo artwork or whatever you have, and then then you should be right within the center. And even at this point, if you said, okay, I turned the frame off and I just want to triple check myself, does it think this logo is going to be, or the artwork's going to be? If you hold the shift key and click frame now, it's actually going to frame the actual Yoda itself. So if I hold the shift key and click frame, as you can see, it's actually going to frame just the area that it thinks the Yoda is in. So I'm pretty much dead on now. And that's how I would do it using the user origin. Now that's the exact same thing if you had a rectangle. So if I had a rectangle, I would do the exact same thing. So for example, on this, let's just say hypothetically that is 9 1/4 by 3 1/2. So I would come over here. I mean, I can actually just leave this if I want. And let me get rid of my camera for a second here. I would create a rectangle. Here, I'm going to deselect using the rectangle. I'm going to unlock it. The width was 9 1/2, I think I said, by 3 3/4. I forgot that quick. 9 1/4 by 3 1/2. I was way off. 9 1/4 by 3.50, 3 1/2. So that, and now I'm going to lock it, and I'm going to turn off the Yoda for a second here, and I'm going to turn on the rectangles. So as you could see, if I wanted to, I could now burn within this rectangle. So let's say I get rid of this square because I don't have that hypothetically. Now I have a rectangle. If I want to put the Yoda inside the rectangle, I could shrink it here, or I could click this rectangle and rotate it up here 90 degrees. And whoops, bring it down here. And I could put my Yoda inside of that if I wanted to, and I would know. Actually, if you look right now, my Yoda's too big. If you can see, if I turn my board, I would actually be over. So that's why I like doing it this way. So now I know what size to make the Yoda. So I'll shrink the Yoda. And another thing I want to show you too is, see how I just did that? Let me undo that. Whoops. If I want the Yoda to shrink dead center evenly all the way around, up here you see the 9 squares here. This is going to be where your center point is, where your anchor point, let's say. So my anchor point right now is in the middle. So if I lower the percentage, it's going to shrink everything to the dead center. If I click on the bottom left, it's going to shrink everything to the anchor point on the bottom left. So that's one good thing to know also. So that's how we do the user origin. Okay, now another method is using current position. So what current position does is wherever your laser is, it assumes that it is going to, well, it doesn't assume, it's actually going to start lasering at the anchor point. In other words, right here, if you look to right here, if you have it at the bottom, let's just use the bottom left as an example, as opposed to center or top right or whatever. So bottom left. So no matter where the laser is, it's simply going to start from wherever it's at, as if it is sitting at the bottom left hand side of your image excuse me, on the screen. So in other words, this is the square we have, and right now if you look here, the laser thinks, if you click this show last position, you'll see the plus come off and on. The laser thinks, the software thinks the laser is right there, and we're using the bottom left origin is where we want the laser to start from, which is where the green square is. So if you'll notice, I'm going to click frame, and the laser is simply going to frame the square where it's at. And what this is kind of for is, so if your machine is, let's say you don't want to move it by hand, you only want to move it by using these move controls, very, very little, then you could actually do that. You can actually, let's say you would move the laser over here, let's move it down, whatever. And if you see here, you see the little crosshair. This is where the software thinks the laser is. However, it's going to start at the current position, or it's kind of confusing where it's current position, where it's going to start right here. So if I click frame, it's just going to simply start framing this right where it sits right now. So if I click frame, it's just going to simply start framing a square as if it's over your material. So again, what this is for is, let's say that you home your machine, you want to move your machine, or I'm sorry, you want to move your laser all the way over here. Here's a great example here. Let's say my material is here, and I want to move my laser over to the right. And then down, over, maybe one more. Just hypothetically, let's say that's it. I'm pretty close though. If you'll notice, my laser is actually here on the physical dimensions of the machine, I guess you could say. However, because I have it set at current position, bottom left, it's actually going to start right here. So if I click frame right here, it's going to frame my actual square because that's simply where it's starting from. This also applies if you want to start in the center. Let's say that you have a mark here in the center. I don't know if I want to mark it. Let's say you have a mark right here in the center, and that's where you want to start from. You could actually just move. You can actually click on your job origin over here where the current position, we're going to say click center, and you see the green dot now is here, the green square. That's where it thinks it's going to start from. So actually, hypothetically, if I clicked frame right now, it's going to come down to the corner here and actually frame the square and then go back to the center. But in this instance, I could actually just move my laser. Let's just say hypothetically it thinks that's in the center. I could actually just now click frame, and it's going to actually think that it was in the center of my material. So that's what current position is. Pretty much it's going to start wherever it's simply placed at, wherever you have your origin on your software on Lightburn. So I hope that you kind of understand that a little bit. It's more so of, you wanting to move your laser head and have the software ignore where it thinks your laser actually is. We don't care where it thinks it is. You can actually turn the plus off. Like, it doesn't care where it's at. It's simply going to assume that it is right there where the square is every time. So that's kind of handy for different things. I actually use that when I do the tumblers. It's one of the things that I use is current position, because I don't want the laser to care where it thinks it is. I want it to start where I tell it to start. And it's really handy for tumblers and things like that. So let's move on to absolute chords. So absolute chords is, let's turn on my laser position. What absolute chords does is, so the machine thinks my laser is right here. If I click get position, it thinks my laser is right here, okay? But if you look at my screen, my laser is actually on the left side. So what I'm going to want to do is, when I tell this to frame, what it's going to do is, since it thinks it's right here, it's actually going to move down to the bottom left, and it's actually going to then go ahead and go all the way around, and then it's going to come back to the bottom left every time. So I hit frame, and what it did was it went around, it moved from here over to the bottom left corner, went around, up and around, and then came back and stopped where it thinks the bottom left corner is. Now, this is just that Lightburn didn't keep up yet. So if I come up here to get position, click get position, you'll notice now it put the crosshairs back down here, because now this is where it thinks it's at. So if let's just say I move my laser over to here 2 times, 3 times to the left or whatever, it's actually going to move back to this corner and then go up and around. This is good for a couple different things, because let's say let me go ahead and click frame, and I'll show you. It's going to move here real fast, and then it's going to come up over and then go back around. So let's say you wanted to move your material. So if I move my material down, now where it thinks, I'm sorry, I didn't click get position. Remember, it thought it was here at this corner. So now I moved my material down a little bit, and I'm going to move it over some. Now when I click frame, it's going to actually shoot down to this corner and then go up around and end back at this corner. So this is another way that you could do if you have different layers of things. It's actually okay for doing tumblers as well. So I'm going to click frame and show you something here. And if I click get position, now you see it thinks it's here. I think one of the things that this is good for is if you have, if you ever seen some of the different stuff of, like if you do 3D, different layers from like a CNC machine, you can actually have a material placed on the bed, and let's just say the laser is just a little bit off. You could actually take, let's just say it's a bird or something like that here. You could actually take that, click it, and you could move it up a little bit and over a little bit, up a little bit, over a little bit. And even if you're using like the cameras, if you have a camera and it takes a picture in the back and you see the background there, when you do that, now if you do frame, it'll actually move to here and it will change where the start position is, and that's the absolute chords. It's going to be the bottom left hand side every time. So I'm going to click frame. See, it's going to move up, and now it's going to frame that. And it's going to think that it is right there again. So, you know, there's different ways that you can do it. It really depends on what you're trying to burn. The two common ones that I use are the user origin and current position. They're the two main ones that I use the most. I think actually what I do use the most is user origin, honestly. Okay, I want to show you real quick. It's easy to find the center of a square, and it's easy to find the center of a rectangle, and it's not so easy to find it of a circle. Sometimes you have it, sometimes you don't. But what I want to show you is, if you don't have the center for a circle, an easy way what I do to carve on a circle. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this rectangle. I'm going to home my machine. If you have a 6550, the regular one, you could just move the laser out of the way by hand, completely up to you. And I'm going to take this circle right here, and I'm going to measure it. It is perfectly round. It is 7 1/4. So 7 1/4 is what I'm going to make a circle on my screen. So I'm going to click the, let me move this out of the way here. I'm going to click the circle icon, just drag a circle, whatever, then click my arrow, make sure I unlock it. I'm going to do 7.25 tab, 7.25 tab. And now I'm going to lock it again. And now I'm going to move my circle down here. So it's, you know, anywhere on the screen. I'm just going to move it over here so that I could turn my camera back on here. And one of the things that you need to do pretty much is we just need to get our laser close to this, and you know, let's see, if we go get position, of course it thinks it's right here. One thing you could do is just have the laser come up in the middle of the machine, and then you move your circle over to it, hypothetically. So if I click here, I'm going to move this over so you can see it here, and I'm going to tell my laser to go to the center of my circle. So make sure you have, I have it here, user origin. Probably could use current position, would be okay. But what we want to do first is just click your circle, make sure its output is on, and whoops, what do we have here? We have my little Yoda. And then what we're going to do is go to arrange, go to move laser to center, to selection center. So now it's going to move my laser where it thinks the center of my circle is. which is right there. Well, clearly we know that it's not because we're looking right at it. It's not where it needs to be. Now I can move my circle down or whatever I can do. Now for me personally, I'm going to move it by hand. I'm going to pull it up to where it's pretty close. Now if you have it marked in the center, of course it's going to be simple. You just put your laser right on the mark there. On this case, I'm going to move my material a little bit, and I'm going to move it to where I think is the center. And then right now it thinks it's in the center. So pretty much all we're going to do, let me raise this up a little bit, is we're going to hit all 4 sides of the circle. So now it thinks I'm in the circle. And let me move this over for you. I'm going to say go up to arrange, and then move laser to left side of selection. Now that it's on the left side, I'm going to click move, and I'm going to click fire. And as you can see, my laser is just a little bit off. So I'm actually going to grab the wheel here and I'm going to move it just a little bit so it's just on the edge. And now I'm going to tell it to go to the right side. I'm going to go arrange, move select laser to the right side of selection. And you can see it's a little bit off the wood. Whoops. It's a little bit off the board. I probably should have turned that off. And then again, I'm going to just move it a little bit. So that gets us pretty close. Now turn your fire turn the fire off. So now I'm going to tell it to go back to the center. Now that I have it at the center, I'm going to tell it to go arrange, move laser. My camera here. I'm going to tell arrange, move laser to, now that I had it to the selection center, which is where I went just now, I'm going to tell it to move to the top. Now that I have it at the top, I'm going to click the fire button, and I'm going to, as you can see, it is a little bit off on it, so I'm going to move it up a little bit and turn the fire button off. And now I'm going to tell arrange laser to the bottom. It's very similar to a square that we were doing, but this is how I pretty much, and I do this usually only 2 times. Now I'm going to hit fire, and that's actually pretty darn good. So I'm now going to tell it to go back to the center. So what we did was we went left and right, and then we moved forward and backward. And now since we moved it up a little bit, we're going to want to do the left and right one more time. And it doesn't hurt. Well, it actually doesn't hurt. Probably really should do it at least 2 times on both. So let's go through real quick. Move laser to, so it's in the center now, so we're going to move it to the right side. We're going to hit, oops, we're going to hit fire, and it's a little bit off. See, that's what I was thinking was going to do. So I'm going to just move it on a little bit. Turn the fire off. Arrange, move laser to left side. Fire button. I might have did my measurement off a little bit here, but it's pretty darn close. You kind of, okay, that's good right there. Now I'm going to turn the fire off, go back to center. And then I'm going to tell it to go to the bottom. You always have to go to the center first, because if you don't, it's actually not bad, it's good. If you don't, it doesn't go where you want it to. So in other words, right now, if I said go to the right side, it's actually just going to move to the right, not going to go to the right of the actual material itself. So, for example, if I say, without going to the center first, if I say just go to the right, it's just going to move there. It's not actually going to move over to the right side where I want it. So we always want to try and go back to the center. And now I'm going to go back up to the top. Click fire. Pretty good. Could go a little bit, but pretty good. And then, so now if I go arrange, I'm going to go back to the center. That should be right there, the center of my material. So now I have current position. And so now if I click get position, of course it thinks my laser is right there, which it is. I don't know where my green dot went. Let me unselect it here. Oh, there it is. So my Yoda, well, before we do that, let's try to do a frame with the circle frame here. So let's try this. So I did it without the laser on this time. Just wanted to make sure it was going to run first. And then now it should shoot back to the center. And so now I'm going to hold the shift key and click the round frame. And you'll kind of get an idea. Is it not on where it should be? As you can see, it's pretty darn close. It's perfect there. And it actually, if you really looked at that and watched it, I'm going to do it again so you could see if you could pick out where it needs to be adjusted. Okay, ready? I'm going to tell you now. If you notice, it's actually on the material here, and it's off down here. Very, very, very little bit. So, hypothetically, you could just move this very, very little. Like I'm going to just nudge it. I mean, ever so little, like that right there. And theoretically, that should be perfect on there. So I'm going to hold shift key, click my frame again. That is pretty. Yeah. So that is how you find the center of your circle. So most of the stuff you're going to want to do, if you're doing a circle like this, you're going to almost always going to want to start in the middle, because that's just going to be the easiest way to do it. So now that you have this circle here, I think you can lock the layer. I don't remember how to do it, but let me see here. Lock selected shapes. So now you can't move it and you can't mess it up. So if I go back to your Yoda, so now I could click on my Yoda. I could come here and make sure it's locked, and I could actually choose the center as the anchor point, and I could just make him larger. And then once I click that, then I'm going to select the outer circle. Whoops, I can't do the outer circle here. I'm going to select the Yoda, and then I'm going to center the Yoda. Sorry, click the Yoda. If you want to click them, and then the center, then the circle, and then click center, and it's going to center the Yoda in your circle there. So now you know exactly where that's going to burn. So for example, there's too much space down here for me. I would actually move the Yoda down a little bit. It's just my preference. Let me turn that camera off. Yeah, I would actually keep the Yoda down here, and then you know where it's actually going to burn. So you would turn that on and turn the outer frame off, and then it's going to burn your Yoda right there. And with just the Yoda on, if you just click the round frame, it's actually going to just do a round frame around the Yoda now. And you're going to notice on my laser here, I'm going to turn that back on. If you're going to notice on my laser, it's still going to be within the circle where I want it. It's perfect. So that's how you use the current position with your job origin here, your anchor point, so I call it, in the center of whatever it is that you're carving. Okay, there's one other thing I want to show you. I call it a bug. I don't know what you want to call it, but it is as far as I'm concerned, it's a flaw in Lightburn. Catches me more often than not. I personally use layers quite a bit, and I use a lot of layers. In other words, sometimes, as like on this here, I may have Yoda call me on my cell phone, and then I'll have a few import. These are all the different sayings that I may have on, rectangle pieces of wood. And what I'll do is each one of them will be on its own layer, and then so I simply put my wood where like let's just say a template. We put my wood where it should be placed on my desk here, and then I'll turn call me on my cell phone on or off. Let's just say hypothetically I go sun times here. So what I'll do is I'll turn put this one on, let's just say layer 3. So I'll turn layer 3 off and leave call me on the cell phone on. Let me turn that one off here. And vice versa. So, and the reason why I do this is this way I can have all of my artwork or clip art, whatever you want to call it, in one. I don't have to open up 5 different, copies of Lightburn to burn 5 different things. I just turn one layer on, burn it, turn that layer off, turn the next layer on, burn it, and so forth. So with that being said, let me show you what I call a flaw, a bug, whatever you want to call it, in Lightburn that gets me every time. And I'm going to show you sometimes why you may actually have this problem as well. I'm going to turn on the Yoda. I'm going to turn the output on, the Yoda, and my circle. I'm going to go ahead and take this one off. I'm going to delete this here just for the sake of argument here, and I'm going to have the shell phone. So here we have the circle, and maybe I want to put call me on my shell phone. I'm going to shrink it down a little bit here on in the circle also. But before I do that, I'm going to want to just turn call me on the shell phone off, or call me on my shell. I'm going to turn it off because I just want to burn the Yoda right now, okay? So when I did that, do you notice the green square is right here? So the green square now stayed center, which I have it center here. If I had it left, look where the green square is going to be. And if I had it center, it's right here. Now if you notice, it's actually center between my furthermost artwork on a different, even though it's on a separate layer and even though it's turned off, it doesn't matter. It still puts it center. So now, so I have current position at center, it actually is going to start right here instead of starting in the center of my Yoda. So even if I turn call me on the shell off, turn the output off, turn the air off, it doesn't matter, it's still going to start right here. So what I call a bug is it's still calculating where the other layers are on my sheet, and it totally messes me up. So if you don't have that, if you don't have this over, let's just say, you see the green dot moving with it now, it's center between that. If you don't have that with dead center of that, it's just going to mess you up. And a lot of times I don't. I just like to have it wherever I want, and it messes me up. So if you remember last time when we did the circle around the Yoda, it went right around that circle here. I'm going to turn my camera on, and just to show you now, you see the green dot here. Let me move this over to show you what I'm talking about. So now watch what the laser does. It's going to actually move. It's going to move here, but it's going to move so far over because it thinks it's going to start from here, and that's not what I want it to do. So I'm actually going to hold the shift key and hit frame now, and watch where it's actually burning now. So keep that in mind if you have more than one image on your software that you have open. If you have more than one image, it's going to take in consideration that other image, even though you don't have it on. Even though the output is not on, the show is not on, it's still going to take it in consideration. And it's very frustrating. And the only way to do it is you got to turn it on, and you got to delete this layer. Whoops, let me move this. So here, if you delete that layer, it puts the dot right back there again, as you can see, where it should be. So I don't know why they do that. I'm not sure what the purpose is. It's very frustrating. But that is something to keep in mind. User origin, you don't have as much problem, but it still can be a problem with it. But that is just something to keep in mind if you have more than one image or more than one layer with different things on it, which I commonly do. Sometimes I'll have 10, 15 things, and I just turn them all off and turn which one on I want to burn. And if you don't have it all centered, now what you could do is if you have this and you center it, because it is dead center of my Yoda, and I turn it off, well, now it's not going to be a problem because it's still dead center of the Yoda. So that is another thing you can do also if that is something that works for you. So I hope this helps with the centering. It's just takes a little bit of practice. Like I said, the circle, anytime you do a circle like that, I always want to start in the middle. But again, if you can't find the center of it, then just go left, go right, go back to the center, up, down, and do that a couple times until your laser is right where you want it. Use current position and just make sure it's in the center, and go from there. And again, make sure you measure your material make a frame of it and use that as your guideline the whole time. But just make sure you turn it off before you start your output off, because otherwise you're going to have a circle on there. So there you go. I hope that helps. Again, if you have any questions, let me know, and I can cover something else for you for replacing your material and centering. And that's it. Happy burning.